We are on the record right now for the February 14th, 2018 meeting of the Beavercreek Board of Zoning Appeals. Can I get a call to order, please?
Mr. Height?
Here.
Mr. Cruzy?
Here.
Mr. Mortar?
Here.
Mr. Raber is absent. Mr. Hung?
Here. Can I have a motion to excuse Mr. Raber?
Motion to excuse. Motion to excuse.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I'm sorry, I used the wrong term. It was roll call, not call to order. What was I thinking? That's why you were confused. Thank you. I presume everyone's had a chance to look over the minutes of our last meeting. If there are any changes to be made, let them speak now. If not, is there a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And in my haste, I skipped over a portion of what we need to approve, and the actual first thing should be the agenda for today. Has everyone had a chance to look at it?
Yeah.
Any questions, concerns, or do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. We'll now enter since we've already approved the minutes, we can move on to the hearing section today. The matter before the board today is the variance request, case V18-1, filed by Nicholas and Heather Harvey of 3180 Shakertown Road. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and call, I'm sorry, if I could have the clerk please read the advertisement first.
This is case number V18-1 on an application filed by Nicholas and Heather Harvey, 3180 Shakertown Road, Beavercreek, Ohio, 45434, requesting a variance from Chapter 158.105C of the City of Beavercreek zoning code, requesting permission for a 48-inch fence to remain in its current location within the required front yard along JL Drive in an R1A district. The property is located at the northeast corner of the intersection of Shakertown Road and JL Drive, further described as Book 6, Page 4, Parcel 28 on the Greene County Property Tax Atlas.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to call the applicant up to the podium to give his or her or both reasons as to why this application should be accepted. And before you begin, there's a little card, I think, on that podium somewhere, which asks you to say a few things before you begin. If you please go ahead and read that card with the appropriate blanks filled in, and then you may begin, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. I, Heather Harvey, 3180 Shakertown Road, Beavercreek, 45434, affirm that the testimony that I am about to give before the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Beavercreek is the whole truth to the best of my knowledge.
Thank you very much. You may proceed.
I guess first, we do sincerely apologize for not filing for the permit. We were very poorly guided by the fence company. Apparently, it is not their practice to ever file the permit, and they leave it solely up to the homeowner, but they did not guide us in that. This is our first time building such a structure. We did not know that it was required. Had it been told to us to obtain one, we most certainly would have done so, and this all could have been avoided. And so not only that, but they also neglected to inform us that the rules of a corner lot, that, hey, you have 2 front yards. We did not know that that was the case until you all give us our notice of violation. The fence in its current position is actually not, in a public right-of-way. It's not interfering with visibility of any sight lines. It's not on the side of the road that you pull up to at the stop sign. Because of the location of our home and the home to the rear of us, the homes back up to each other, back to back, instead of back to side or so forth. So in which case it might present kind of an odd property line of fence butting up to fence. The fence is actually a line where ours is currently with our rear neighbors, directly in line with that. According to the fence company, I guess you could take this for what it is. According to them, a fence lower than 48 inches is not even called a fence. It's more of a decoration. So we have a dog and 2 young girls, as you can see, and Shakertown, as you know, is a very busy road. So we would like to keep the fence at its current height for that reason. And also, I think that in the case of our specific home, we provided some photos that hopefully you all have looked at. You can't really tell by looking at that picture what I'm about to say, but the corner of our home where the fence butts up to is actually a very functional spot of our home. Typically where the fence where you would think of where a fence aligns with the house, it's kind of an unused portion of the house, kind of somewhere you never even really go. We actually have a front door right there. There's a sidewalk there. There's a covered patio. And if we would have extended the fence in direct line with our home, not only would that look hillbilly, as I call it, but we would have had to, dig up a sidewalk, dig up an entire flower bed, tear down 2 other trees. It really would have compromised the functionality of our home. So, that's kind of a dilemma that we are in at this point. The neighbors across the street from us have a fence that was approved for a variance in 1999. They are the ones to the left of our home, then there where that red car is in the driveway. Our neighbors have all welcomed us graciously to the neighborhood, and they all absolutely adore the fence and everything that we have done to the home. Apparently, prior to us buying the home, it was foreclosed and not very well kept. So they are very pleased with what we have done with it. We really don't feel that at this point lowering it the required 6 inches is going to do anything in terms of bettering the neighborhood, nor will keeping it at the 48 inches negatively impact the neighborhood. We have actually one of our neighbors was awesome. There's no other word for it, but they went around. This is not something that we did. We didn't even ask for them to do that, nor did we even know that they were doing it. But they went around and they have collected 18 signatures from 18 different homes. And this is all in favor of us keeping it in its current location.
All right, thank you. Would you like us to consider that letter when we make our decision tonight?
Yes.
Could you please provide it to the clerk? Thank you.
I guess that's basically it. This has not been a very fun thing for us to have to go through. When we tried to contact the fence company originally, the day that you all showed up at our house, they were not very accommodating, basically kind of saying it was our fault, and we didn't really, we were kind of backed in a corner at that point. So, we just ask that you take all of that into consideration.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the BZA. Before you is an application requesting approval of a variance from Section 158-105C of the City of Beavercreek Zoning Code. Should you choose to approve this variance this evening, it would allow for a 48-inch tall fence to remain within the required front yard in an R1A zoning district. As was previously stated, the property is located at 3180 Shakertown Road within Section 8 of the Golden Acres subdivision. Section 158-105C of the City of Beavercreek Zoning Code states that no fence, wall, or hedge shall rise over 42 inches within a required front yard. And in the case where the principal structure is located within the front yard, fences up to 6 feet high shall be permitted in the required front yard as long as it doesn't extend any closer to the public right-of-way than the home. So in this specific case, there was a 48-inch tall fence that was erected, as the applicant said, without a zoning permit. So the property is located at the corner of Shakertown and JL on a double frontage lot, two front yards. So if in a normal circumstance, if someone were to come in for a zoning permit, if they wanted one that was over 42 inches, they would be allowed to locate it where that green line is. If it was to be under the 42 inches, it could go all the way up to the property line, all the way around the property, up to the public right-of-way, which is, where the property line extends to. In this case, the red is where the applicant installed their 48-inch fence. So it extends, I believe it's 12 feet from the edge of the pavement, so it's right at the property line, and then extends back here. It actually doesn't go across the back here. That's the neighboring fence, which is probably a 3-foot tall split rail that goes along the back of the entire property, and then comes down this side and over here. And as you can tell, it does extend over into the neighboring property, probably about 5 feet, but we're not here for that. That's not our issue this evening. So that's something that would probably have to be dealt with between neighbors. So the applicant stated that a couple of the reasons why they couldn't put the fence in the required location was because of the dogs and the small children, as far as not being able to lower it. But the fact that the entire back of the fence is barely 3 feet tall, I mean, that doesn't really, it's not really a justification that we can use on a staff level for that. And then as far as, the patio area, I think you can see it here. They do have that open patio. So they wouldn't be able to, they could, but it wouldn't make sense to come off of the back of the house that way. But unfortunately, the way we have to look at it is if you can meet the code, which is by building the 42-inch fence instead of a 48-inch fence in the location where they have it, staff isn't really in a position to be able to recommend approval of a variance for the case because it doesn't meet the justifications that are outlined in the zoning code for variances. So staff cannot recommend approval. However, it is up to the Board of Zoning Appeals to have the final decision. And we have outlined that in the recommendation and then also in the resolution in the attached staff report. And if you have any questions, I can answer those following the public hearing.
Thank you very much. Now we're at the portion of our hearing where we open up the floor to public input regarding the variance. If there's anyone out there who would like to speak, I am in the right part, right? Okay. If there's anyone out there who would like to speak, either for or against the application, if you'd like, you can come up to the podium. When you do so, there's a little card in one of the corners, and before you give your testimony, if you just read that card and fill in the appropriate blanks before you speak, we can take your testimony today. Thank you.
Vernon Hazen. My address is 685 Jayell Drive, Beavercreek. And I affirm that the testimony I'm about to give before the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Beavercreek is the whole truth to the best of my knowledge. We've lived directly across the street from the fence. If you look at the aerial view, that red dot is pointing at our front yard. We look out our upstairs window, we can see the fence in its entirety. We walk out our front door, we can see the fence in its entirety as far as that side of the street. We've lived there since August of '76, and we welcome the addition and the improvements that have been made since the family has lived there. And we have no objection whatsoever to the height of the fence or its being there.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who's out there who would like to come and speak? Again, the same instructions. There's a card. If you could fill in the appropriate blanks and then continue.
I, Yakov Diskin, I live at 675 JL Drive. Affirm that the testimony that I'm about to give to the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Beavercreek is the whole truth to the best of my knowledge. So I reside in the neighboring house right on the corner of Shakertown and JL, where the red car sits in the driveway. And I would like to second the opinion of my neighbor that we find the fence appealing, and in my opinion, the whole objective of these rules are to protect the neighbors and the neighborhood from unwanted structures. And I did not get a chance to sign the letter that was handed to you, but I would gladly do so to second, or he said there's 18 signatures, so I'll be the 19th signature to add on that the fence, my wife finds it appealing. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else out there who would like to add any input tonight? They're seeing no one else. I'd like to go ahead and close the portion of our meeting where we take some testimony. And I believe now is the time that we open up the floor to members of this board to ask questions, if they have any, of anyone that's testified today.
Seems like I always have a question. The fence company, they haven't offered you any kind of resolution on their behalf because of the zoning?
Well, it's interesting because I have been in constant contact. We actually filed a better business. Oh, sorry. Okay, we had to bring the babies. Do I have to do this again? Oh, okay. We actually filed a Better Business Bureau complaint, which will graciously be on the site very soon. But I have been in contact with them weekly because we have heard nothing. And I'm like, you guys, we have until the 14th. We need to know what the plan is here based upon the outcome of this, because basically the feedback that I had received was that they were not going to offer us any help. My husband said, well, maybe I can cut it all down. And I was like, no, we shouldn't have to do that. We paid all this money for this fence, and if we have to take it down, the boards are all going to be damaged. I mean, we didn't pay for a used fence. I know that sounds ridiculous, but we didn't pay for a used fence. They should make this right. They led us in the wrong direction, and if they weren't going to obtain the permit, then they should have required us to do so before they ever set shovel to dirt. And that's principle, period. That's bad business model if that's how they choose to operate. I mean, they're Eads Fence Company. They've been in business for 38 years. They service all of the greater Cincinnati area up into, North Dayton, and I just find it to be very negligent on their behalf that this is how they operate their business. And so back to the question, they didn't contact us until yesterday. So they said that, which is almost to the dot 30 days since I filed the Better Business Bureau complaint, which is supposed to be like their deadline for response, which is neither here nor there. But they said that they contacted you guys and that they found out that the hearing was today. And so basically they're kind of waiting to hear what the outcome is. They said that at this point, I think in order to maintain their rating, they're willing to make it right, which is funny because that's not what they told us originally. But I guess the Better Business Bureau complaint is working. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Yeah. It seems to me they should step up. It's not just some guy building fences, it's a company that's...
That's basically what I said. I said, listen, we didn't just hire some Billy Bob that showed up with, with a truck to our door. We hired, we hired you, we got some quotes. We chose you because of your A+ rating. We chose you because of how big you were. We didn't expect this from you. And honestly, we were very happy with their workmanship, the folks that came out and helped us. Everything was good. So when y'all showed up, this was we were like, what is happening? What do you mean? And, in our defense, I'm not trying to make us sound stupid, but we didn't know we had to file for this permit. We didn't know, we knew that we were foregoing the survey because we talked to our neighbors and they were all okay with the location of where we were putting it. But in terms of opting out of obtaining the permit, we didn't realize that that was different. And I know that that sounds silly, but we just didn't realize. We thought that it was one and the same. And on our contract, they actually circled it all for us. They didn't even give us an option. They never mentioned it again. They actually crossed out the front yard section, which clearly that applies to us. Front lot setback, that corner lot setback, that clearly applies to us, and they never mentioned it to us. Now, we didn't question it because we didn't know.
Right.
We didn't know anything about all this corner lot hocus pocus. We didn't know anything.
Yeah, I think they dropped the ball, and that's where you gotta go get some kind of action is from them, because they dropped the ball, obviously. I don't think there's much we can do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that really stinks is that if it has to be lowered, practically the entire thing has to be rebuilt. There's 2 gates. The gates are going to be rebuilt. All new boards are going to have to be used. the dilemma is just that, at the 42-inch height, it's kind of not safe for our dog or for our children, so.
Yeah, do you mind if I make a comment real quick?
No, go ahead, but please go ahead and read the
Card.
little card, yeah.
Yeah, so I, Nicholas Harvey, 3180 Shakertown, affirm that the testimony I'm about to give before the Board of Zoning Appeals of the City of Beavercreek is the whole truth to the best of my knowledge. I do want to just comment on the height of the fence, because clearly the location of the fence isn't a problem, it's the height. And for me, the problem, she had mentioned that the height, if it came down, it still wouldn't be a problem with kids and 2 dogs. And she also mentioned that the fence along the back, while it's, stands all of 3 feet, yeah, there's a perfect picture. Our problem with the fence height, and the reason that it is the height that it is because we have a boxer, so we have a dog who's active, but she's not active in a way where she goes exploring. She kind of stays around the house. So we're not concerned about the 3-foot fence at the back, because she doesn't go back there, she doesn't go over fences, et cetera, et cetera. The height of the fence also, in terms of protecting the dogs, our home, the girls, we want it to be that height on the area that's closest to Shakertown, because Shakertown is obviously the busy road. Nobody goes down JL. So nobody's going to be this direction looking to get over a fence or get at a dog or get at 2 young girls. So the height of the fence for me, while I understand that if we'd gone through the proper channels and followed the permit, we would have understood that, okay, maybe it needs to be lower, we'll rethink this. But the fence has already been put up, and it's that height. From a safety perspective, that's my biggest concern. It's that height because we're protecting the girls in our family, et cetera, from the traffic on Shakertown, not JL. So the height of the fence in the back for me is I guess at the end of the day, I'd like for you guys to consider that when it comes to what you decide, even if it doesn't meet the traditional standard for a variance or for you to approve this. I would just like for you to at least consider that aspect of it.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think in terms of what we were told also is that, because we asked when this first happened, so what's our success rate? Like, how are we looking here? And we were basically told that we have to stake a case for undue hardship and unique circumstance. And I think that clearly this is hardship, this is an unfortunate situation, but I think that because of the layout of our home, I think it is truly unique. I think that had we had to construct the fence directly back, that would be ridiculous. I think we can all agree on that, based upon how the patio and stuff is. So I feel like if you just use the aerial photo, and we had not come here, and you took one look at that, you'd be like, nope, they should have just taken it off the back of their house. But looking at what we have presented, I think that it's very clear that even if you didn't know the rules, if you went to go put a fence up, you would say, yeah, let's come this way, and then, towards JL, and then let's go back out this way. I think that would be probably any way anybody who lived in that house would want to construct the fence.
So I think it's amazing that you have neighbors coming out to support you. It's great to see that as part of our city. Again, you presented a good case. I drove past your house. I looked. It makes complete sense. The way that it's open on both edges, if you didn't construct the fence there, it wouldn't block anybody from walking through that area, right?
Correct.
Right.
So, from our perspective, it's not a matter of whether your case, what you're presenting to us, makes sense or not. It's whether the diligence was there by you and or the construction company to do that. I mean, I'm excited your neighbors came. I think that's very telling of who you guys are as neighbors. But I don't want you to think that's what we're kind of going off of here.
Just 2 questions. First, you had a petition of all the neighbors signed everything. Did the neighbor that sits behind you facing Shakertown, did they also sign that
Yes.
petition?
They
Just curious.
put on they should be the bottom one on that front page. It says I live directly behind them.
Okay. I don't have it. It's
Oh,
over
sorry.
there. I was just
Sorry.
curious if they were.
Yep.
And then secondly, when you got the notice of violation, do you remember what day that was or when that was?
December 21st. It was a fabulous Christmas present, in
December
addition to
tw-
this Valentine's.
December 21st.
Or maybe 22nd. It was Thursday, right before Christmas.
Okay. What did you do next and when did you do it?
We immediately got on the phone and called you guys and tried to figure out what to do.
When you said immediately, that day?
Yep. Yep. We
And the-
called you guys. We tried to get a hold of the fellow that came and actually gave it to us. We called the fence company, and I demanded to speak to Mr. Terry Schaefer, who is the fellow that came out and, sorry, the guy that came out to sell us the fence, the guy that we signed the contract with, and he continued to not return our phone calls. I then told Eads Company that I wanted the manager to call me because we had a serious incident. He never returned my phone call, ever. Still has not returned my phone call. And we had not heard anything until yesterday, after we filed the Better Business. I mean, that was the last we heard from them.
From the fence company.
Yes. Yep. And so, I mean, honestly, we really didn't want to have to file the complaint, but that was the only way we could get them to talk. That was the only way we could get them to do anything.
Sure. All right, thank you.
I too had just a couple of questions. How much did you pay to put the fence up?
I believe $4,000.
Have you contacted anybody about how much it would cost to take it down and put a 42-inch fence up?
No.
Okay.
I mean, we asked them what our options were that day when we were trying to figure out what to do, because basically they said that there was nothing they could offer us. And so then we started trying to figure out, okay, well, if we start ripping all of this off, all of the boards are going to be ruined. You know, we don't really, as I said, we don't want to have to construct a used fence. And so we then told him that it would really only be that side, and so I believe he was supposed to be looking at the numbers, but he never got back to us on that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Pereira, can I ask you one question? Or maybe a series of questions.
Okay.
From the city's perspective, are there any safety issues regarding this fence?
No, it doesn't create any type of line of sight issues or anything like that. It helps that it's a kind of that split rail fencing.
I know that you mentioned that the city didn't feel like they could recommend this variance, but I want to make sure I understand why that is. My understanding, it sounds like that this is a technical violation of the law, and I'm not sure what the motivation is right now by the city to not grant the variance. Can you just help me understand that?
One of the main things that we look at when we are evaluating whether or not to recommend approval is, can they meet the requirements of the code? And I mean, in this case, they can. That technically the property owner can't create the need for the variance. The dogs and the children create the need for the variance. They're saying we need it to be this tall because we need to protect our dogs and our children. It's understandable, you know, completely, but the property owner is creating the need for that variance, and it's just those are the things that we're looking at when we have to when we decide, can we recommend approval, or, you know, do we recommend disapproval?
Okay. Anyone else have any questions of Ms. Pereira?
Yes, just real quick.
Yeah.
The house across the street, the
Yes.
gentleman that came and talked, the variance that was placed on that,
That one was it was in the 90s. The variance was actually denied.
okay.
They didn't get the variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. They appealed to City Council, and City Council gave it to them because City Council does as it pleases. So they chose to overturn the decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and they were given the variance for that fence.
And is that that's a 6-foot fence? Is that
Yes,
correct?
it's a 6-foot tall fence in the required front yard.
I have another
Thank you.
question. When did they install the fence? How long's the fence been up?
The-
Our fence?
The current,
August, maybe, I think. We moved in, we closed on the house on like July 28th, I think. And I
According-
think they put it up at the beginning of September, so it had
Okay.
been up for a couple of months before
you got
it was
it,
ever brought to our attention that it was wrong.
okay.
I believe that our zoning inspector was driving by and saw that
Happened to
there
see
was
it.
a new fence, and so he stopped by, and I issued them a warning, and they did. I spoke to them that day. So they followed up immediately to ask me what they needed to do, what they could do,
Sure.
and all of their options. So.
Do we have any further questions of Ms. Barrero? I don't have any further questions either.
I've got one more point.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Harvey, please.
I'm sorry.
That's
I don't mean
okay.
to drag this on. I did want to mention one thing since you've got this diagram up. And I guess I want to understand I'll call it the spirit of the code, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
With our neighbors in the backyard, we are backyard neighbors. And so I guess I understand why you wouldn't want a fence over 42 inches if you had a side neighbor. Meaning that if our backyard neighbor was actually, the house was tilted and facing JL instead of the street, whatever the next street is. Because then our fence would technically, it would really be in their front yard, and it would be a nuisance. But in my mind, I don't know what, I guess maybe this is something just to ponder or something to think about, is in a scenario where you've got back-to-back neighbors, why is it that we still have technically a required front yard which extends all the way to our backyard? And what is that, what's the purpose of that? What is it protecting at that point? Because our backyard neighbor, our fences line up. Obviously theirs are shorter, but they line up. And so I guess that's something else to consider, I guess, maybe going forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
I guess, and real quickly, just, sorry, one more thing. To piggyback off what he said, in terms of aesthetics, I know that that's nothing that you guys are concerned with factoring in, but they do match up, and I think that if you, a 42-inch fence is pretty small, guys. I mean, that's definitely like a toy fence. That's something I think of driving in Oakwood as a cute little picket fence in someone's front yard. But in terms of our home, we would lose so much property if we had to put the fence in order to maintain a height that was of reasonable, size for our protection. We would lose so much functionality of our property. And so a toy fence for that much of our yard, regardless of the fact that we can maintain an adequate fence on the other side, that's not the side that's of any worry, really. So again, I mean, I think that it's really an unfortunate situation for folks that live on a corner lot. You're really put in a situation that really makes it seem as though you either have to, I guess if we had 2 acres, it would be much different. It wouldn't matter. We would be able to, whatever, if our house sat back, we would be able to have whatever yard we want, but we don't. And so we would then be losing so much of our property in order to maintain a fence that was of any reasonable height. And so, I don't know, it just seems silly to have a fence that's a decoration.
I understand that concern, though. Thank you. There appearing to be no other input. Do we have any other questions from the board? Okay, so I believe now it's time for us to make a decision. I'm going to phrase this carefully. So I'm going to phrase it as follows. I'm going to phrase it in the affirmative first and see where we go. So I'd like to see, is there a motion to approve the variance, the application for a variance today? Mr. Mortar is moving to approve the variance. Do I have a second?
You have a second.
All right. Can we get a roll call of the votes to approve the variance?
Mr. Cruzy,
Aye, yes.
Mr. Mortar,
Yes.
Mr. Height,
Yes.
Mr. Hung.
Yes. The application for variance is approved. We'll go ahead and get the resolution executed. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
All in favor, say aye.
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 This meeting is adjourned.